right, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining me. This webinar that you're joining is about how to create cohesive talk show flow in 5 easy steps. So who am I? My name is Colby Jessup. Right now I am the main host, one of two, for What Race on Sixth Man Radio. That is an internet podcast radio show that mostly focuses on odd news and current events that are going on. That's been going on since January of 2013, and we've got quite a few loyal listeners, so that is very positive. I'm also currently on The Crack Up, which is a show on Bulls Radio here in Tampa that's also goes over the airwaves as well as being a podcast and on the internet. So that's kind of neat that that's one that people driving around can listen to as well as the ones sitting in front of their computers or on their phones at home. I'm also a student studying for public relations, my master's at Full Sail University. That should be ending up here in August. So what is this webinar all about? This webinar there is are for a lot of things that I've wants to be on a talk show the course of my time, meaning radio, wants to host one that wants to really could start their own radio or television talk show and wants to get involved with the production side, anything like that. This is for you. There's a lot to having a cohesive flow in a talk show that a lot of people either can't find the information. I know when I started out, I couldn't find any information on it, or they just don't know where to look. So this is to kind of combine all of that information for these people that are willing to learn and interested in learning so that they can do better in the beginning. A lot of this I learned through trials and tribulations, but it is tried and true and it does work. The first step to this is take time to plan. Planning will make or break you. I try to give myself, especially with What Race, it's once a week. So as soon as I'm done with my show, I turn around and start trying to find information and fun things to add for my next show. You want to, and in planning, part of that is review, and you want to go back and think about, okay, what did I like, what didn't I like from this, and what am I going to do better next time to make my audience more interested. Like I said, it takes a lot of time, so it's best to start early. I actually just got a tweet from Breezy Mobile asking how much time should someone take to plan. Well, it depends on your show and how often it is and what the content's like, how long it lasts, if you're video, like if you're television or if you're radio. It really depends on that type of thing. For me, with What Race being once a week, I give myself at least a week. Now, if I know that something's coming up that's big and takes like a lot of planning, if there was an event or something like a debut of a new segment, something like that, then I would do some additional planning, potentially even a month out. But you really want to give yourself as much time as you possibly can to really get everything in order for your next show. Now, when you're planning, you want to start broad and then get narrower. So if you are listening and you don't really have a show, you're just kind of thinking about it, and that, again, could be radio or television. You're just kind of thinking about it. The first thing that you want to do is say, okay, what kind of show do I want to do? What kind of show would I be best on? And from there, you get narrower. So for me, I was like, okay, I like to know kind of what's going on, but I get bored with the day-to-day news. So I wanted something that was fun news, that was something that I could laugh about and joke about, but was also interesting and relevant. So that's why I went with odd news. Once I decided odd news, I was like, okay, what kind of stories? When you get into your stories, again, we're getting narrower. When you get into your stories, that's when you start really getting into your target audiences. So you have some stories that only some people are going to like, some that only other people are like, but you have to have a good mix of it and let it flow well in order for people of all different target audiences to listen. Because if you only focus on one, there's a whole bunch of other audience that you're not getting to because they're not interested. Another part of planning is take time set aside time before the show to plan more. So what I mean by this is you want to take some time before the show. I usually give myself 30 to 15 minutes, and you want to go through and look and see if there's any breaking news, anything that you need to talk about. Because if you can talk about something that happened 10 minutes ago that's just now starting to hit the media, if you can touch on that when most of your listeners aren't going to know about this and it's a huge thing, you are going to get so many more listeners the next week because they're going to be like, oh wow, they're actually paying attention, they know what's going on. It may not even be completely relevant, it should be somewhat relevant, but it might not be for example, breaking news is big news. Now my show with What Race, for example, is funny news. So it's still news, it's somewhat relevant, it's okay to put on there. Now if you have breaking news about some soccer game where so-and-so won, so-and-so lost, but your actual show is about video games, then it might not be worth throwing that in there. But big relevant news should be talked about, and also if you do come across something that just happened that's big that you can use on your show, come back, check every 15 minutes or so for updates, because when breaking news comes out, there's a lot of confusion from the media, a lot of just trying to get facts out there. They're not always right, keep that in mind, but you really just kind of want to give information as soon as you can, but as correctly as you can with that. Again, it's not something that'll happen every time you have a show, but it's good to have that extra time just in case. Because the one time that it happens, and you realize it after the show, you're going to feel really disappointed because that was a great opportunity that you just missed. My next step would be know the pecking order. Now, this sounds kind of harsh, the way that that's worded, but there is actually sort of a hierarchy within a show. You're going to have the main host or a couple main hosts. So say, a lot of times on television it's one or two people. Same with radio, usually it's just one. But you're going to have that one main person that usually introduces a lot of things. They are kind of the person that helps guide the flow through the show. They're the bigwig, for lack of a better term. They're not always going to introduce everything, though. You're also going to have most shows have other people that are in it. Not every show is just going to be a one-man show. So if there's other people that are in it, associated with it, on air, it's good to have different people introduce things. They will introduce them different ways. They will kind of change up the energy a little bit. It's very beneficial to have more people included in introducing stuff, even if they're not the main person. My next step is to know the content. This is so important. When I first started out, I had no idea what I was doing, and a lot of times I would just find things off the cusp. So I would be live on air, going through trying to find things to talk about, be like, oh, I found this is good, I just saw this, da-da-da-da. Well, if you do that, then you're actually reading your article, reading your news, reading what it is you're supposed to be knowledgeable about on air. You're going to be very obvious that you're reading. You might stutter a little bit. People will try to ask you things and you'll be like, well, I don't know. It just says this. And that really does not make you sound like you know what you're talking about at all. It makes you sound unprepared, and it makes you sound like any Joe Blow could be doing your job. It's not a good look. You also want to vary the subjects. With the subjects, it kind of goes back to the target audiences. You want to have different subjects within your show. So, and it also relates back to the planning. When you have different subjects, different target audiences will be drawn in. They're going to want to hear what you're having to say. They're going to want to be like, oh, what's next? Because just because they're different from their main subject that they're interested in doesn't mean that it won't have elements that they won't be interested in. Excuse me. It's good to incorporate as many things as you can, as many different things, and then from there, especially if you're starting out, you can kind of conduct research and be like, when did listeners drop off? When did they come back on? Do we have any repeat listeners or viewers? And what subjects are incorporated when these repeat listeners or viewers are participating? It's good to vary it. That way, in the beginning, you can see what works and what doesn't. The next thing is to know your opinions. This is, again, related to the content. If you plan it out, you research it, you say, okay, this is what my content is going to be. From there, you can always do a little bit extra research. Don't always go from one. I would say absolutely never, actually. Only work off of one source. With different sources, you'll get new information, different information, and you'll be able to form a more well-rounded opinion. Know your opinions. A lot of times on a show, the opinions will clash, and that makes great talking points. Oh, you feel this way? Why do you feel this way? You think this? Well, I think this, and here's why. What makes your opinion better than mine? It's great to listen to and watch. Come up with questions. This kind of relates to the opinions. If you can take one controversial subject and be like, all right, here's an example. There was a few weeks ago, 2 kids in kindergarten, they were like 5 and 6, they were caught having intercourse in a bathroom at their elementary school that was attached to their classroom. For the show that we did that week, we incorporated this story, and the main question that we asked ourselves, and you don't want to discuss this before the show, you want to do it on air because it's more real. So the main question we asked ourselves was, who is responsible for this? Is it the parents? Is it the teachers? Is it the children? Is it media? Is it what? On air, that one question blew up because everybody involved, everybody in the studio had different opinions, and everybody wanted to talk about it. Having questions really helps stimulate the audience to make them want to interact and makes it more interesting. Next, you want to decide on segments. If you don't know, segments are little pieces of audio or video, whatever you choose, and they are kind of the same every week. For example, like a Dear Abby, like an advice column, or like a what happened this week, or a dumb criminal of the week, or something like that you can incorporate, that it's the same every week, but the story, the main content is different. These help to increase interaction because people will look forward to these segments if they are good, and they're also going to start interacting as far as like tweeting and commenting, calling. They're going to, if you have a YouTube, they might go to that to try and catch up on the segment. It's something for them to look forward to, for them to try and interact and be like, okay, when is this going to happen? Or, oh, I think this about that. Something that they can just look forward to and really get involved with. It also helps to tease the audience because, like I said, they're going to be looking forward to it, and they're going to be wanting to know, when is this happening? So sometimes you can kind of change where you put the segments. That's not a bad idea. It can help alter the flow of your show because if you have a big story that you want to do, you usually do that at the end of it, at the end of the show, but you can kind of play with your timing for different stories if you throw a segment in different places. Next, you want to incorporate the interaction. If you're doing a good job on your show, people will be interacting. And more interaction is both great and it can be stressful. You have, generally, I would suggest having people, at least one person, monitor social media. That means have a tab up for Facebook, have a tab up for Twitter, any other things that you use, so that if people are interacting, you can comment on it on the air. Also, have somebody, especially if you have a screening room, do that. It's good to know beforehand what the caller is going to say, but not everybody has that luxury. Now, there's pros and cons to just bringing the person on dry. If you bring a person on dry and just say, hey, this is so-and-so radio, so-and-so talk show, what do you have to say? A lot of times the callers are, number one, not paying attention, but also they are kind of confused and it takes them a minute to get into it. However, you can get some great quality from that. You can get a lot of things to talk about. Some part of the screening room is you get rid of the people that you don't want to talk to or that you think won't be beneficial for your show. However, some of those people actually make it way more entertaining. At one point, I had a person call in that literally called himself Backwoods Joe. And he was quite a country character. And my show at the time was adult contemporary hip-hop and R&B. That's what Six Man Radio is. That's what Race is. And I did not screen him. I had no idea what I was getting into. And for about the first 30 seconds, I thought he was completely messing with me. I think my co-host and the audience all thought that too. We had no idea what was going to happen. That is actually very good for talk shows because then not knowing what's going to happen helps make it more exciting. And exciting is always good. You want to keep the energy up no matter what. If you're not enjoying your show, neither is your audience. I cannot tell you how many times I've either tuned in or even been on a show where it's just like the main host especially, they're kind of the one that holds it together, where somebody, even the main host, is just not into it that day. And that happens. We're all human. But a good way to keep the energy up is to prepare your energy. And what that means is if you have something that just pumps you up, makes you happy, makes your energy just go through the roof, try to do that before the show. If you can do that with your co-hosts or with the other people, like the guests, anybody else that's going to be on air with you, that's kind of a good thing too because it's a bonding time and it ensures that everybody's energy is going to be up. Some things include running, some things include blasting music and jumping around and dancing like crazy. Or if you're just simply not feeling it and you know that you will be if you could just get a little energy, but you don't have the time for that, pop a Red Bull, get some caffeine in you. Just have something so that you are looking forward to it, because if you're looking forward to the show and you're into it, you're going to be thinking more on your feet and you're going to be more fun to listen to and or watch. You also want to fluctuate the energy levels. Now, different stories are going to have different energy levels that just come with them. One thing I would definitely say is do not start a show on a sad note. It's very hard to begin something with a very depressing, sad subject and then try to be happy about the remaining stories 15 minutes later. It's very hard for both the person on air and for the listeners to be like, how did they go from starting like that and now they're happy? This just doesn't make sense. If you do have a sad story, put it at the end of the show. It's easier for you to handle your content during the majority of the show that should be upbeat, and then at the end it kind of gives you a wind down closer to handle that less upbeat story. Vibe and Rome just tweeted in saying, when should a big high energy story be placed in a show? It's a really good question that a lot of people don't really think about. If you have a big story, it first off depends on how big it is. If it's something like with radio that needs to be split up between a music break, on television it would be a commercial break, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It actually can help you because during the commercial break, people can be commenting, tweeting, interacting. You can answer that and they'll be back on the end of the commercial break or music break. I would say put that in the last third of your show. And the energy should be pumped for that. It should also have teasers in the beginning that kind of up the energy for that story. So throughout most of the story, you're going to want some teasers, some energy that's like, oh, this is really cool. You need to stay tuned. We're really excited about this. And then at the end, the last third, if you need to break it up, break it up. But if not, have that big story, talk about it, high energy, enjoy that story. You have to really sell it in the beginning, and then you have to follow through and show that, hey, what we were selling was actually legitimate. Thanks for thanks for listening and viewing this long. Here's the big story. You need to interact with others. Part of keeping the energy up is keeping everyone's energy up. And sometimes that's really difficult to do, especially if somebody just isn't on it that day. But if you have enough energy, it can spread. Laughter is a great way to raise energy. Another way is poking fun. Little bit of innocent making fun of people in the studio is okay. Of course, you don't want to be mean, but a little bit of just, haha, you said that wrong, or what are you wearing today? Like, just a little bit of fun, quirky banter can be very helpful. It'll get everyone laughing. It'll get everyone involved. The listeners and viewers will enjoy it, and you can move on with a higher sense of energy. Thank you for listening and watching and interacting with me throughout this webinar. I hope it was helpful for you. If you want any more information, these are some great resources that I've used, as well as with my experience. These are awesome ways to learn more about the interaction that's needed in a talk show. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, want to just get in contact with me, again, my name is Colby Jessup. My website is colbyj-pr.com. My email address is cjessup@fullsail.edu. You can find me on Twitter at colbyjessuppr, and I also have a Facebook page. Thank you so much for listening.